As Commander Marcus Chen visits his wife's grave to say a final goodbye, the impossible happens. Elena, the brilliant scientist he lost years ago, touches his shoulder, alive in spirit, and reveals the shocking truth behind the war that destroyed their lives, and the cosmic threat that still looms over humanity. The rain fell steadily on the marble headstone, each drop carrying with it the weight of 3 years of grief. Commander Marcus Chen knelt before the grave, his weathered hands trembling as they traced the engraved letters that spelled out Dr. Elena Vasquez, beloved wife, brilliant scientist, hero of humanity. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The cemetery was empty except for him, as it always was during these visits. Most people avoided the military section, especially the graves of those who had died in the HFY War. Too many painful memories. Too many unanswered questions about what had really happened out there in the darkness between stars. Marcus pulled his coat tighter against the autumn chill and began to speak, his voice barely audible above the gentle patter of rain. I'm retiring tomorrow, Elena. 35 years of service and I'm finally hanging up the uniform. He paused, watching a leaf spiral down from the oak tree above her grave. The brass wanted me to stay on, help train the new generation of officers, but I can't do it anymore. Every time I look at those young faces, I see yours. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees and carrying with it the scent of wet earth and dying leaves. Marcus closed his eyes and let himself remember the way Elena used to laugh at his terrible jokes. The way she'd scrunch her nose when she was concentrating on a particularly complex equation. The way she'd fall asleep with her head on his shoulder during long hyperspace jumps. I should have listened to you, he whispered. You said the HFY weren't what they seemed. You begged me not to authorize that final assault. But I was so sure, so damn certain that we had them cornered. His voice cracked. If I had just listened. The memories came flooding back unbidden, as they always did when he visited her grave. The HFY War had been humanity's first real test as a spacefaring species. For 3 years, the alien fleet had systematically destroyed human colonies on the outer rim, their ships seemingly unstoppable, their intentions unclear. Elena had been part of the scientific team trying to understand HFY technology, to find some weakness they could exploit. She'd worked tirelessly, often going days without sleep as she pored over recovered alien artifacts and intercepted communications. Marcus remembered the day she'd burst into his command center, her dark eyes wild with excitement and fear. Marcus, you have to stop the attack, she'd said, grabbing his arm with surprising strength. The HFY aren't invaders, they're refugees. Their homeworld was destroyed by something else, something worse. They're trying to warn us. But the assault was already underway. Admiral Harrison had given the order, and Marcus had supported it. The joint human fleet had surrounded the HFY mothership, preparing for what they believed would be the final battle of the war. You were right about everything, Marcus said to the headstone now. The HFY weren't our enemies. They were trying to prepare us for what was coming, and when we destroyed their ship, we lost our only chance to learn how to fight the real threat. The rain was coming down harder now, but Marcus didn't move. Let it soak through his clothes, let it chill him to the bone. He deserved worse for what he'd done. Elena had been on the human flagship when the HFY mothership exploded. The alien vessel's destruction had triggered some kind of quantum cascade, tearing holes in space-time itself. The flagship had been caught in the wave, its hull breached, its crew exposed to the void. Marcus had watched helplessly from his command ship as Elena's last transmission came through. She was in the science lab trying to seal a hull breach when the ship's gravity generators failed. Tell my family I love them, she'd said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. And Marcus, remember what I said about the HFY. Remember their warning. The transmission had cut out just as the flagship broke apart, its pieces scattered across the debris field of what had once been the HFY fleet. Marcus had spent the next 3 years trying to decode Elena's research, trying to understand what the HFY had been trying to tell them. He'd found fragments of their language, pieces of their technology, but never enough to complete the puzzle. I'm sorry I failed you, he whispered to her grave. I'm sorry I couldn't finish what you started. Maybe someone else will figure it out. Maybe humanity will be ready when the real enemy comes. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. Elena's personal research pad, the one she'd been working on right up until the end. He'd carried it with him for 3 years, unable to bring himself to look at her final notes. "This is my last visit, Elena. I can't keep coming here. Can't keep torturing myself with what-ifs and might-have-beens. I need to find a way to live, with what I've done." Marcus stood slowly, his knees protesting after kneeling for so long. He placed the research pad on Elena's headstone, his fingers lingering on the cold marble. "Goodbye, my love," he said. "I hope you're at peace wherever you are. I hope you can forgive me for being too stubborn to listen." He turned to leave, but then he felt it, a gentle touch on his shoulder, warm and familiar despite the cold rain. His breath caught in his throat as he slowly turned around. Elena stood behind him, but not as he remembered her. She was translucent, her form shifting and flickering like a hologram with a failing power supply. But her eyes were the same, warm, brown eyes that had always seen right through him. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice echoing strangely in the rain. "I've been waiting for you to be ready to hear the truth." Marcus stumbled backward, his heart pounding. "This isn't possible. You're dead. I saw your ship." "Death isn't the end," Elena said, moving closer. "The Corvani taught me that. When their ship exploded, when the quantum cascade tore through space-time, it didn't just kill us. It displaced us, scattered our consciousness across multiple dimensions." She reached out again, her ghostly fingers almost solid against his cheek. "I've been trying to reach you for 3 years, Marcus. But you weren't ready to see. Your guilt was too strong, your grief too deep." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face, mixing with the rain. "Elena, I'm so sorry. If I had just listened to you, if I had called off the attack." "You couldn't have known," she said softly. "None of us could have known what would happen. But Marcus, that's not why I'm here. I need you to understand something important." She gestured to the research pad still sitting on her headstone. "My last work, the data I was collecting when I died, it's all there. The Corvani's warning, their technology, everything we need to prepare for what's coming." "What's coming?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew. "The Devourers," Elena said, her form flickering more intensely. "The species that destroyed the Corvani homeworld. They consume entire civilizations, absorbing their knowledge, their technology, their life force. The Corvani were trying to warn us because they detected the Devourers' approach. Earth has maybe 5 years before they arrive." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. 5 years? Elena, without the Corvani's help, we don't stand a chance. "That's where you're wrong," she said, smiling that familiar smile that had always made his world brighter. "The quantum cascade that killed us also preserved us. The Corvani consciousness survived just like mine did. They're scattered across the dimensional barriers, but they're still here, still trying to help." Elena's form began to solidify slightly, as if the rain itself was giving her substance. "The research pad contains the key to bridging the dimensional gap. With the right equipment, the right knowledge, we can establish communication with the Corvani survivors. They can teach us how to fight the Devourers." Marcus reached for the device, his hands shaking. "But I'm retired. I'm just one man. Who's going to listen to me?" "You're not just one man," Elena said firmly. "You're the commander who discovered the truth about the Corvani War. You're the one who's been carrying the weight of that knowledge for 3 years. And more importantly, you're the one I trust to do what needs to be done." She placed her ghostly hand over his as he picked up the research pad. For a moment, Marcus could have sworn he felt real warmth. "The device will only work for someone with a quantum signature match," Elena explained. "Someone who was present during the Cascade event. There are only a few dozen survivors from the battle, and most of them are too traumatized to be of any use. But you were there, Marcus. You have the signature." "What do I need to do?" Marcus asked, his military training overriding his shock and grief. "Go to the quantum research facility on Luna," Elena said. "Dr. Sarah Chen, yes, your niece, has been working on dimensional breach technology. Show her the research pad. She'll understand. The rain was beginning to slow, and with it, Elena's form was starting to fade. Marcus could see the cemetery through her now, as if she were made of mist and memory. "Elena, wait," he said desperately. "I have so many questions. How do I know this isn't just my guilt manifesting some kind of hallucination?" She laughed, that musical sound he'd missed so much. "Because you're too much of a skeptic for that, Marcus. You've always needed proof before you believed anything." She gestured to the research pad in his hands. "When you activate that device, when you make contact with the Corvani consciousness, you'll have all the proof you need." "Will I see you again?" he asked. Elena's expression grew sad. "I don't know. This interaction is taking everything I have. The dimensional barriers are strong, and I'm not sure I can break through again." "Then why?" Marcus asked. "Why use up everything just to talk to me?" "Because I love you," she said simply. "And because humanity needs you to stop wallowing in guilt and start fighting for its future. The Marcus Chen I married was a man who never gave up, who always found a way to win against impossible odds. That's the man I need you to be now." The last of the rain stopped, and Elena's form was barely visible now, just a shimmer in the air. "One more thing," she whispered. "Tell Sarah that her Aunt Elena says the answer to her quantum entanglement problem is in the 13th equation. She'll know what it means." Marcus stood alone in the cemetery, the research pad heavy in his hands. For a moment he wondered if Elena's appearance had been real or just his mind's way of dealing with his grief. But then he looked down at the device and saw something that made his heart skip a beat. There, on the screen, were new files that hadn't been there before. Files with timestamps from just minutes ago. Files that contained data about dimensional bridge technology and quantum consciousness transfer. He opened the first file and read Elena's words. "If you're reading this, then our communication was successful. The Corvani are waiting on the other side of the dimensional barrier. They have ships, weapons, and most importantly, knowledge about how to defeat the Devourers. But they need a way back to our reality." Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose washing over him. The guilt was still there, but it was tempered now by hope. Elena was right. He couldn't change the past, but he could still shape the future. He walked quickly back to his transport, already planning his trip to Luna. Dr. Sarah Chen would be surprised to see her uncle, especially with the impossible story he had to tell. But Elena was right about one thing: Sarah would understand. She was a brilliant scientist, just like her aunt had been. As he drove away from the cemetery, Marcus caught a glimpse in his rearview mirror of a figure standing by Elena's grave. But when he looked again, there was nothing there but an empty patch of grass and a marble headstone. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the pristine corridors of the Luna Quantum Research Facility. The artificial gravity was lighter than Earth's, making his steps feel bouncy and uncertain. He'd spent the journey from Earth reviewing Elena's research, trying to understand the complex equations and dimensional theories that filled the research pad. Dr. Sarah Chen met him at the security checkpoint, her face a mixture of surprise and concern. At 32, she bore a striking resemblance to Elena, with the same dark hair and intelligent eyes. "Uncle Marcus, what are you doing here? I thought you were retiring." "I was," Marcus said, holding up the research pad. "But something came up. Something that could change everything." Sarah led him to her private laboratory, a sterile room filled with quantum computers and dimensional monitoring equipment. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, then immediately regretted the choice of words given where he'd been spending his time. "Actually," Marcus said slowly, "I think I have." He told her everything, about Elena's appearance at the grave, about the Corvani's true mission, about the coming threat of the Devourers. Sarah listened with growing amazement, her scientific skepticism warring with the evidence right in front of her. "This is impossible," she said, examining the research pad. "These equations, they're beyond our current understanding of quantum mechanics. The mathematics alone would take our best theorists years to work out. Elena said to tell you that the answer to your quantum entanglement problem is in the 13th equation," Marcus said. Sarah's face went white. How could you possibly know about that? My entanglement research is classified. I've never discussed it with anyone outside this facility. She quickly scrolled through the research pad's files until she found the 13th equation in Elena's EO notes. Her eyes widened as she read. My God, she whispered. This is it. This actually solves the stability problem I've been working on for 2 years. Over the next week, Sarah and her team worked around the clock to build the dimensional bridge, device based on Elena's specifications. Marcus watched from the observation deck as the scientists assembled the complex apparatus, a crystalline structure that hummed with barely contained energy. Are you sure about this? Sarah asked on the day of the first test. If we're wrong, if this is some kind of elaborate hoax or delusion, we could tear a hole in space-time. We're not wrong, Marcus said firmly. Elena was never wrong about the science. The test began at 800 hours. The dimensional bridge powered up slowly, its crystalline components glowing with an ethereal blue light. Marcus felt a familiar sensation, the same quantum resonance he'd experienced during the Cascade event 3 years ago. Suddenly, the air in the center of the bridge shimmered, and a figure began to materialize. Not human, but tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and silver skin that seemed to reflect light in impossible ways. The Corvani spoke, its voice carried by the quantum field rather than sound waves. Greetings, humans. We have been waiting for this moment for what you would call 3 of your years. Marcus stepped forward, his heart pounding. I'm Commander Marcus Chen. I was there when your ship was destroyed. I'm sorry we didn't understand. Your warning in time. The past cannot be changed, the Corvani replied. But the future remains unwritten. Your mate, Elena Vasquez, has been our advocate in the spaces between dimensions. She has convinced us to trust humanity once more. Elena is alive? Marcus asked, hope flooding through him. Not alive as you understand it, the Corvani said, but not gone either. She exists in the quantum foam, sustained by the Cascade event. Her consciousness has become a bridge between our peoples. Over the following months, more Corvani survivors made contact through the dimensional bridge. They brought with them knowledge that humanity desperately needed, advanced ship designs, weapons technology, and most importantly, intelligence about the Devourers. Marcus found himself recalled to active duty, this time as the head of a joint human Corvani defense initiative. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who had ordered the attack on the Corvani fleet was now working alongside their survivors to save both species. The Devourers, the Corvani explained, were an ancient species that had consumed dozens of civilizations across the galaxy. They fed on technological advancement, literally absorbing the knowledge and capabilities of the races they conquered. Each victory made them stronger, more adaptable. They will arrive in your solar system in 4 years, 2 months, and 16 days. The lead Corvani scientist, who called herself Zara 9, told the combined human Corvani command staff. They travel in a massive fleet organism, a living ship, the size of your moon. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing the Devourers' approach. What's their weakness? How did you fight them? We didn't fight them, Zara 9 replied. We fled. Our entire civilization evacuated to generation ships, but the Devourers followed. They consumed our homeworld, our colonies, our very history. We came to your space because we hoped to find allies, beings who could help us stand against them. And instead, we destroyed your fleet. Marcus said bitterly. You acted according to your nature, Zara 9 said. You saw unknown ships and assumed aggression. We understand this now. But perhaps together we can write a different ending. As the months passed and the Devourer fleet drew closer, Marcus found himself working 18-hour days, coordinating the joint defense effort. The combined human Corvani fleet was impressive, but still woefully inadequate against the approaching threat. It was during one of these long nights that Elena appeared to him again, this time in his quarters aboard the new flagship, the Elena Vasquez. You named a ship after me, she said, her ghostly form more solid than before. I'm flattered. You've been helping us, Marcus said. Sarah told me about the breakthrough in quantum consciousness transfer. That was your work, wasn't it? Elena nodded. The Corvani and I have been working together in the quantum realm. We've discovered something important, Marcus. The Devourers aren't just consuming technology and knowledge, they're consuming souls. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean? Every civilization they've conquered, every being they've absorbed, those consciousnesses don't disappear. They're trapped inside the Devourer collective, forced to serve their new masters. The Devourers aren't just raiders, Marcus. They're slavers on a cosmic scale. How do we fight something like that? Elena's expression grew determined. We turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Devourers absorb consciousness, but they can't control it completely. If we can create a quantum virus, something that spreads through their collective consciousness, we could free the absorbed souls, Marcus finished. Turn the Devourers' own victims against them. Exactly. But it will require a willing consciousness to carry the virus into their collective. Someone who can resist their absorption long enough to deploy it. Marcus felt his heart sink as he realized what she was suggesting. Elena, no, you've already sacrificed enough. I'm not truly alive, Marcus. I'm a quantum ghost, sustained by the Cascade event. But that same quantum nature makes me immune to their normal absorption process. I can carry the virus directly to their core consciousness. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when the Corvani had predicted, a vast organic mass that blotted out the stars. It was beautiful in a terrible way, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to hypnotize those who looked too long. The combined human Corvani fleet met them at the edge of the solar system, their ships arrayed in a defensive formation that stretched across millions of kilometers. Marcus commanded from the bridge of the Elena Vasquez, watching as the enemy approached. All ships, this is command, he broadcast. Remember, we're not just fighting for our own survival. We're fighting for every soul that the Devourers have enslaved. Today, we end their reign of terror. The battle began with a coordinated assault on the Devourer fleet's outer defenses. The enemy's ships were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Organic constructs that seemed to heal from damage, weapons that fired streams of living energy. But the human Corvani alliance had advantages too. The Corvani's quantum technology allowed them to phase in and out of normal space, striking from unexpected angles. The human ships, retrofitted with alien tech, could deliver devastating firepower. The real battle, however, was taking place on a different level entirely. Elena, her consciousness now fully integrated with the quantum virus, prepared to make her final sacrifice. I'm ready, she told Marcus through their quantum link. Remember, you'll need to destroy the dimensional bridge once I'm inside their collective. It's the only way to ensure the virus spreads completely. Elena, I can't lose you again, Marcus said, his voice breaking. You're not losing me, she replied. You're setting me free, and through me, you're freeing every soul they've ever enslaved. Elena's consciousness plunged into the Devourer collective like a bright star falling into an ocean of darkness. She felt the weight of millions of absorbed minds pressing against her, voices crying out in a dozen languages from species she'd never heard of. The virus she carried began to spread, quantum code that rewrote the very structure of the collective consciousness. The Devourers tried to stop her, sending waves of psychic energy to crush her digital form, but Elena's quantum nature made her slippery, hard to pin down. One by one, the absorbed souls began to break free. First the Corvani who had been taken decades ago, then species from across the galaxy, the crystalline Jektar, the gaseous Velnari, the machine consciousness axiom. The effect on the Devourer fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Their ships began to tear themselves apart as the liberated consciousnesses turned against their captors. The massive fleet organism convulsed, its bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying. It's working, Sarah reported from the Luna facility. The dimensional readings are off the charts. She's actually doing it. Marcus watched in awe as the Devourer fleet collapsed in on itself, consumed by the very souls it had tried to enslave. But even as victory seemed within reach, he knew the cost. Destroy the bridge. Elena's voice echoed in his mind one last time. Don't let them trace the virus back to its source. Goodbye, my love. I'll see you on the other side. With tears streaming down his face, Marcus gave the order. The dimensional bridge on Luna overloaded and exploded, severing the connection between realities. Elena's quantum signature vanished from the sensors, lost in the chaos of the collapsing Devourer collective. The war was over. The Devourer fleet had been destroyed, their enslaved victims finally free. The survivors, representatives from dozens of species, formed a new alliance, united by their shared experience of liberation. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Elena Vasquez, watching as the rescued souls said their farewells before departing for their home regions of space. The Corvani would help them rebuild, sharing technology and knowledge freely. She did it, Zaranine said, joining him at the viewport. Elena Vasquez has become a legend among our people, the liberator we call her, the one who freed the enslaved. She always wanted to make a difference, Marcus said quietly. She just never expected to do it after she was gone. Sarah approached them, carrying a small device in her hands. Uncle, Marcus, I thought you should see this. It's a quantum resonance detector. I've been scanning for any trace of Elena's consciousness. Marcus took the device, his hands shaking slightly. And? There's something there, Sarah said softly. Very faint, but it's there. She's not completely gone, Marcus. Her consciousness is scattered across the quantum foam, but it exists. Marcus felt a spark of hope. Can we bring her back? Not yet, Sarah admitted. But I think, given time, given the right technology, we might be able to reconstruct her quantum signature. It would take years, maybe decades, but it's possible. Marcus smiled for the first time in what felt like forever. Then we'd better get to work. 20 years later, Commander Marcus Chen stood in a very different cemetery. This one was on New Corvani, the planet where the surviving members of Elena's species had chosen to rebuild their civilization alongside their human allies. The headstone was simple but elegant, carved from a crystalline material that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. The inscription read, Dr. Elena Vasquez, Liberator of Souls, Bridge Between Worlds, forever in our hearts. But this time, Marcus wasn't alone. Sarah stood beside him, now the head of the Interdimensional Research Consortium. Around them, representatives from dozens of species had gathered to honor the woman who had saved them all. The reconstruction is nearly complete, Sarah whispered to him. Another year, maybe two, and we'll have enough of her quantum signature to attempt a full revival. Marcus nodded, but he wasn't really listening. His attention was focused on the figure standing just beyond the crowd, translucent, shimmering, but unmistakably Elena. She smiled at him, the same warm smile that had first captured his heart all those years ago. Then she mouthed 3 words, Wait for me. Marcus touched the quantum resonance detector in his pocket and felt its gentle hum. Elena was out there, scattered across the fabric of reality itself. But she was coming back. Love, it seemed, truly was stronger than death. As the ceremony ended, and the crowd dispersed, Marcus remained behind, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the quantum foam, Elena was waiting. And for the first time in 23 years, Marcus Chen was at peace. The war was over, the dead were remembered, and love had found a way to transcend even the boundaries between dimensions. Take here. The distance, a star began to shine brighter than the rest, and Marcus smiled. Elena was keeping her promise. She was coming home. End of story author's note. This HFY, Humanity HFY story explores themes of love transcending death, the cost of war, and humanity's capacity for both destruction and redemption. The quantum consciousness concept allows for a scientifically plausible explanation of how Elena could return, while honoring the emotional weight of loss and sacrifice that drives the narrative.